to the Ohio RAM Show.
Everybody, this is Jim Lawyer here, and you're watching the OhioRAAM Show, the show about ultracycling and all things race across America. And we're going to have a great show tonight. Hey, Lee, how's it going?
Pretty good, Jim. How are you doing?
Doing awesome tonight.
Well, we want to tell you that this show comes to you because of all the wonderful people who run our time stations here in Ohio. There's a lot of folks, 41 at Oxford, 42 at Blanchester, 43 at Chillicothe. And I think we need to just identify the fact that somebody suggested that we got money from the Race Across America to run this thing, and we do not.
No.
This is something that Jim and I fund ourselves. In fact, I want to thank Jim because he just made a major financial commitment for the improvement of the show. Mm-hmm. You don't see that yet, and it'll be a little while before you do, but we think you may notice some changes in the future, and that'll be largely due to Jim's effort. Thank you, Jim.
Oh, you're welcome, Lee. Anything to make this better and get the job done.
So if you'd like to help us out financially, let's help out Mike Minium, the sign man.
There you
go. He puts those signs out. He's the one who really puts his financial life on the line for these signs. And so if you go to our website, OhioRAAMshow.com, on the right, you can see a place there. You can make a little donation to Mike for a few bucks so he can replace signs. And again, as always, at the time stations, you can get a sign for $10, and that puts one on the road.
Definitely.
Can't send them to you. They just the shipping cost so they wouldn't break would be just enormous.
Yes.
Okay, want to make sure that and thank all of you who are following us on Facebook, subscribing on YouTube. Want to make sure all of you do that thing, and when you're subscribing on Facebook, be sure to ring that bell.
Definitely. And if you're watching out there, post your comments or questions for either Leah or myself or our guest tonight. And if you don't have any of those, just tell us where you're watching from tonight. We'd appreciate that.
Yeah, we should have some comments. Going to talk about crewing, and it should be some questions. And we hope some of you out there have some ideas that you'd like to share. We'd be glad to hear them.
Definitely.
No news tonight, Jim?
No, not really. We're let me talk real quick about, Joe Barr. Well, we'll remind everybody that the crew seminar, that's a very, very, very good thing to join in on, that the Race Across America guys put on. It's a tremendous source of knowledge. If you've ever done one, you should go back and do it again because you will learn more stuff. And it's all online virtual now, so it's a great way to do it. You don't have to go anywhere. But the next one is next weekend, I believe, or the 25th, 26th. So get signed up for that and join in. And this is Joe Barr. Joe Barr is going to be heading to North Carolina April 8th to do a record attempt, 471 miles in his age category. He's going to really try to do 500. And thanks to our good friend Doug Shivington, we're going to have some live or recorded information from the actual attempt. So we really appreciate Doug.
Recorded live.
Yes, recorded live. There you go. I like that. That's a good term.
Yeah, I hear that on people say this is recorded live, isn't everything
recorded live?
I don't know.
There you go. Exactly.
See that? Yeah.
All right. Ready to get this thing going, Lee?
Well, I want to talk about next week. We got
that's right.
We're going to go to New Zealand and meet with Team NZ Blue. I've talked to these guys a couple times on the phone and chatted with them. I tell you, they're a crazy bunch, Jim.
That'd be awesome.
We should have a lot of fun, and we want to say a word of consideration for all the flooding they've had there with that cyclone. We call them hurricanes up here, but cyclones down there. And I a little concerned about Joanna Sharp, Jim, but I did hear from her today, and Yeah, 7 seats left for the crew seminar. Sandy says, "Oh, let's." Well, I did hear from her today.
Okay.
She's out
Yes.
on this peninsula across the bay from Auckland, and as I
Okay.
understand it, she's pretty much cut off. The roads are washed out and so forth.
Oh no.
If I got that right. And I was glad to hear that she's okay. And I guess a lot of the towers were knocked down there, and the
Gotcha.
internet
Okay.
was kind of spotty. So glad to hear. And if you're out there, Joanna, let us know. And also,
Definitely.
I've got a job for you, but we'll get to that a little while later.
There you go.
With that, Jim, you go ahead and introduce our guests here.
All right. We'll bring Randy Catron on first. How's it going, Randy?
Very good. Glad. Thank you for inviting me onto the show.
Oh, you're quite welcome. And we've also got Chris Aceta. Is that correct?
You nailed it.
Hey,
Yeah.
I got one right finally.
Thanks for
Excellent.
having me. Appreciate the invite.
Thank you very much for both of you being here and discussing this great thing about ultra crewing, specifically RAM and RAW. And I know both of you have been in this quite a while as crew and everything else. You want to tell us a little background, each of you? Whichever one wants to start's fine.
Randy, you go ahead first.
Okay. Well, I've always enjoyed riding bike and lived in Iowa most of my life. I live in Dallas now, but a couple of the people that I knew in Iowa from the Central Iowa cycling community were very involved in ultra racing. Paul Black, who finished RAM, and I did a bike a couple times as a solo. And then Dr. Bob Breedlove, who did RAM a couple times on tandem, and unfortunately he was a tragedy on RAM. But both Dr. Bob and Paul Black were on our local race team, and so got to know about ultra cycling just from talking with them. And 2013 and 2014, I did 2-person RAW with Colin Arnold, and we did that for a couple of years. Took a year or so off. Colin kept doing solo RAW, and I crewed for him a couple times there. And then Chris and I crewed for an Australian team a few years back, and then last year we crewed for a four-person team, a RAM team.
Gotcha.
So it's kind of how I got involved.
Outstanding. How about you, Chris?
Well, I sort of came at it from a different angle. In 2004, a cousin of mine named Mark Longwell asked me if I would want to crew for him for a race across America. And I said, I think his promise was, you won't sleep much, you'll eat bad food, and you'll sit in a car most of the time. And I said, and so we raced a 2-man RAM that year, and we finished dead last. I remember Rob Kish beat us, and we met him at the finish line. And but I was hooked at that point.
Right.
And I ride bikes. I had done some brevet riding. I worked in a bike shop. I knew about basic bike mechanics. So from that event, I just kind of got hooked up with various people. In 2005, we raced a solo. We DNF'd in Arizona. And then I took about 5 years off, and I went to one of the crew seminars and hooked up with a 4-person team from Carolina. And we went on to win the 4-person under 50 category that year.
Wow.
And then I got hooked up with primarily since then, my crewing experience has been with foreign teams coming to the U.S. So I've crewed extensively with the Danes, Australians. And so, like I said, I think I've done this event 10 times. And so I sort of came into it through a family connection. But, once it gets in your blood and you're in the RAM family, it's real
definitely.
hard to
Great family it is, too. I mean, all the ultra cyclists are so tremendously good and helpful with everybody, It's amazing. Let's talk about the crewing for this year. How do you guys pick your crew? What's some of the key important factors on building a good crew?
So I'll say that our preference to pick crew is to use people that we know, either family members or friends that we know personally. I think the riskiest thing a crew chief or a team can do is to try to recruit randomly off the internet, off Facebook pages or whatever. You really don't necessarily know what you're getting. So we work our connections really well. This year, I'm happy to say that our team, it's going to be a 4-person mixed 60-plus team. We filled our crew. We have 10 crew members. And of those 10 crew members, 7 have either raced RAM or RAW or crewed RAM or RAW. So we have three rookies, and our 3 rookies are very involved in competitive bike racing. So we feel real good about our crew. And that I would say the times that we've had issues with crew has been people that the crew chief really hasn't had an opportunity to interview or to vet. And so this year I feel really good about our crew.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I'd echo what Randy says. You go with what you know. Fortunately, in a lot of the racing I've done, I haven't had to recruit crew because they've been coming from overseas, and they're usually known to the folks who are racing. They're either in the same cycling group. Sometimes it's a husband or a wife of one of the racers, which sometimes I might throw up a caution flag for that, because that person will worry about their spouse when they're in the crew van and should be navigating. But it's, knock on wood, that's worked out well for us. I think, you talk about professions that might lend themselves well to the crew environment. Certainly anybody with a military background who's used to keeping odd hours, doctors, people who are self-employed, teachers. We've had good luck at having teachers on our crew because they're very even-keeled. They're used to dealing with, sometimes unruly students. They seem to handle the pressures of RAM pretty well. But I think you draw from the well that you're familiar with most.
Definitely.
Most success.
What would be, if somebody was watching this and was interested in getting into crewing, what would be a good way of doing that?
Well,
I would think. Go ahead, Chris.
Despite having said don't rely on folks you meet on the internet, getting in the RAM forums and chats, participating in events like this, if they wanted if they wanted solely to crew, just trying to get on a crew with someone they know or someone can vouch for them. If they ultimately want to race RAM, I think the great way to do that is to crew it first.
Definitely.
And then I think you can hook up with just about, if you want to race solo, try and get on a solo crew, or if you're going to be team, get on a team crew.
Gotcha.
Channels out there.
Absolutely.
Were you going to say something, Randy?
No, I agree.
Okay.
I agree with Chris. Just kind of reach out, and there might be certain teams that'll say, well, you may not be a good fit with us, but as crew chiefs, we just have to make sure that the people that we put on the crew don't have any medical issues or behaviors that may potentially make them less than able to do all the jobs that need to get done on the crew. So I expect everybody on my crew to be able to navigate and drive. They'll follow vehicles, not necessarily the RV, because some people just aren't familiar with or comfortable driving a big vehicle like that, but we'll have enough that will. But if they can't drive the RV, they can certainly navigate the RV. Obviously, navigation for the RV is a lot easier than navigation for the follow vehicles, because we just go from time station to time station. So
gotcha. How important go ahead.
Well, I was going to mention one thing. What if someone's really interested in crewing, I would say be serious about your commitment. Don't promise you're going to be able to be there and then decide 2 weeks before the event you don't want to do it anymore. Those folks are counting on you to be part of that team, and that can really sink somebody's plans if suddenly they find themselves down 1 or 2 crew members and they're a week away from the start. You've got to be willing to commit when you do.
Gotcha.
And the crews are spending money too. I mean, they're buying airplane tickets, and I mean, a lot of crews fly. A lot of teams have to fly their crew to the start, so they're spending thousands and thousands of dollars to make this race happen. I mean, literally thousands.
Okay. How important is the crew chief role as opposed to the whole crew itself?
Go ahead, Chris.
Well, so I think, I'm sorry, I was just sending a message to some folks in the other room.
Okay.
Hear that sound. The crew chief, obviously, I think is the most important role on the crew. And there should be obviously a good second in command as well. The crew chief, though he may want to or she may want to, can't stay awake 24 hours a day. But the crew chief sets the tone. You lead by example. You should have a familiarity with organizing people. Should be able to communicate effectively with your crew. And by that, I mean language barriers, things like that need to be addressed in advance if you're working with crews from other countries. I really think that the crew chief, though the nominal, leader, actually doesn't have that much more difficult of a job than the rest of the crew, but they have far more responsibility. You have to be willing to accept that. When things go wrong or something bad happens, you're the first person they want to talk to. When things go great, maybe the crew chief isn't around then, but you definitely have to be that leader and sometimes that shoulder to cry on. And
yeah, exactly right. The crew chief sometimes has to make the hard calls.
Yeah, definitely.
Calls that we don't like to make, but we have to make them either for safety or to just keep the race moving down the road. And sometimes we have to have hard conversations, not only with the crew, but with the riders. I mean, that's one of the things that can jam up the crew chief and the crew really bad, is if a rider is having some issues. So as crew chiefs, I think we have to sort of keep our eye on our riders to make sure that they're training, that they're prepared for this event, because they come into the event and they're not prepared. They say, hey, I can't finish this, we expected you to ride 100 miles or you guys cover 100-mile time station leg, and 40 miles in, he says, I'm done. I can't do anymore. That creates some substantial problems for the crew chief and the crew and the other rider. So although it's not our job to necessarily be the rider's coach, we have to be confident that the riders are going to be training and be ready to go.
Gotcha.
And if you're the crew chief and you're doing RAM, whether it's your first time being a crew chief or your 10th time, know that rule book. Know all the safety rules. Read the route book thoroughly before you get to Oceanside. Know all about your registration paperwork. Be able to waltz through that process at the beginning of the race. Get to know the race officials when you're in Oceanside. Talk to them. Listen to them. You don't want to be that crew out on the road that doesn't get a break when they need one. And be willing, if you know something and you see another crew in your hotel parking lot trying to get their vans together, help them out. If you know something, you can help them out. Be that sharer of information, but you definitely got to know. You got to know the rules.
Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah.
Officials.
Beyond knowing the rules, what are some important key factors in having a good crew and etc.? Being a good crew chief, being a good crew person. What's the most important things to be on the crew?
So, I mean, as crew chief, that and my crew has heard this and will hear this. I mean, there's two overriding rules. Number one is safety of the riders and the crew is paramount over anything. It trumps anything. If we have to come to a full stop because it's a safety issue, we will come to a full stop and talk about it and get the problem solved if necessary. We hope we don't have any safety issues like that, but if we have to, we have to. Second is to keep a bike moving down the road as close to 100% as we can. Not have any 15, 30-minute, 3-hour stops. And I've had 15-minute, 30-hour, and 3-hour stops in all the races I've crewed on or been crew chief for because of things that have come up, and that in some cases can potentially cost you your placing. You could still finish the race, but it could cost you your placing. Regarding safety, the crews that I work with, we have a philosophy of we direct follow every chance it's allowed to direct follow. So even though it's optional direct follow at some times during the day, if they let us direct follow, we direct follow just to keep the rider safe at all times. And of course, we do it between 7 p.m. and 7 a.m., but we'll do it whenever else we can too. So,
yeah. I think if you're going to be a good crew member, qualities of a good crew member, someone who's has a high tolerance for discomfort, right? You're not eating regularly, not sleeping regularly, not showering. Someone who's open-minded, a good listener, collaborative, capable of, making snap decisions when necessary, but also capable of taking direction. Age doesn't matter. I've had crew members who were young and old.
Right.
And I think it's just a good crew member is responsible not only for him or herself, but for the safety of the rest of the team, and they take that personally.
Gotcha.
One thing about age, I don't know if I 100% agree with Chris on the age thing, because I think when you get crew members on the extreme of age, like so age 25 or less, you're not most places will not allow you to drive a rental car in the U.S. if you're
Right.
under age 25. So that sort of eliminates
Limits, right?
We pretty much won't take anybody under age 25 on our crew. And in terms of older individuals, really you have to look at, their ability to go on little sleep, to get by on little sleep,
Mm-hmm.
and to do the physical demands that are required to run their crew. The lifting bikes on and off isn't that hard. The lifting coolers full of water and lifting cases of water is something that requires some strength.
Gotcha.
But for the vast majority of people, it's fine.
Gotcha. How important is it for you guys, or do you have backup people? Does everybody have a specific job, or does everybody do multiple jobs on a crew? What's the best way to do that?
Chris?
Well, I think there's no right way. Like
Okay.
we talked about that before we went on the
Yeah.
air. But if I'm running a crew, I would expect everyone on that crew to be able to do all the jobs of a traditional crew member, right? You can drive, you can navigate, and you can be on the RV team.
Right.
A lot of the crews I've worked with are crews that have worked together previously. We've done multiple RAMs together, and you tend to fall into a specific role. Some of the RAMs we've done very well. We had a tremendous RV crew. And that's all they did. They stayed with that vehicle, that same 3-person crew. So that was an exception. But normally everyone else on the crew takes a shift behind the wheel. They take a shift with the route book. They'll take a shift in the RV. So I think you need to kind of be a jack of all trades. But other teams, Randy, maybe you've worked with teams where you did have defined roles and you had success. I think it just varies based on the makeup of your crew.
Yeah, I think we've had jack of all trades. Pretty much everybody's been a jack of all trade, but
Mm-hmm.
certain people have certain skills that they're better at than other people. So we say, okay, if something medical happens, you're going to do the medical. If we have a big bike mechanical, you're the best bike mechanic, so you work on it. But all of us can change tires, do minor bike repairs. We have a person on the crew this year who's going to be our social media person who's going to post all the time and stuff. When that opportunity arises. So yeah, they have to be able to do almost everything.
Gotcha.
You make a great point, Randy, about someone with a specific skill set. Say you bring a massage therapist on your crew or a doctor. Sometimes you may not want them in the follow van if they're needed to be somewhere else and they have to skip a shift or shift crew around. And we have had instances where we've had certain people with specific skill sets. We tried to keep them in the RV as much as possible because we knew we were never going to go more than about 8 hours without rendezvousing with that vehicle. So if we didn't have and that was a maximum amount of time, we'd have to wait to see that individual.
All right.
But barring that, I think that everybody should be expected to do all the jobs.
Yeah.
Excellent. How important is sleep scheduling, and do you enforce making your crew sleep, instead of trying to do other things, etc.?
That's an area where we're going to try to make some significant improvements this year. We did last year. We didn't do a whole lot of enforcing on sleep, so people weren't necessarily sleeping when they probably should have when they were in the RV. We probably had the RV a little bit too noisy. There was probably too much chatter going on while we were going down the road. So where that sort of bit us was at the end of the race. We still won our division, but we were really, really tired at the end of the race. The crew was. Riders were fine for the most part, but the crew was really tired. So we're going to do a better job this year. And as crew chief, I'm going to really pay attention to how much people are sleeping and really encouraging them to get sleep and creating an environment where they can sleep. You wear eye shades, wear earplugs when you go down to sleep. So it's improvement area.
Go ahead.
I think that is the most important thing the crew has to consider. Is a well-rested crew is a fast crew and a safe crew.
Yes.
And again, I've had the benefit of working with some experienced crew people over the years, and like it's what Randy said. You get in that RV and you're on a sleep shift, go to sleep.
Yep.
Don't get on your computer. Don't get on your phone.
Yep.
Go to sleep. If you have to put a hat over your face or your earplugs in, do it. And pro tip, the best place to sleep in an RV, especially when they might be moving, the rack above the driver's
driver.
The best place to get rest. It
A
may
lot
be
less movement or whatever.
well, you're not supposed to be up there when they're moving, but if you
Okay.
happen to be, it's a lot less bouncy than the back bedroom.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
But we've set every time I've done a 4-man RAM, we've had a pretty set sleep schedule. The expectation is of every 24-hour period, you would be on for up to 16 hours, but then get 8 hours off. And that could be anywhere from 6 to 10 hours where you might be off shift.
Mhm.
And yeah, eventually, sometimes you have to do a double. That's just the way RAM is. But
Right.
we tried to get everyone at least a 6-hour period where all they were expected to do was sleep.
So I just saw a message pop up from Steve Fuller, who was
Yes.
a crew chief for Sarah.
Mhm.
And he said 15-minute naps. And I trained myself. I can go to sleep within about a minute and a half if I just close my eyes.
I wish.
It takes practice to do
Yep.
that. And sometimes I'll do 15 minutes and then click it again and do an extra 15 minutes. But
Right.
Steve is right. That really can help. And I've been in the cars and stuff when I've been really tired and told I'm the navigator and say, hey, we don't have any turns for the next
Great.
25
You're on
miles.
that
I'm gonna close my eyes for 15 minutes
Yeah.
and
Sleep when you
try and get
can.
some sleep. So Steve's got a great point. If you can learn to take 15 to 30-minute naps, that's great. If you sleep longer than that, there's research I think that shows that it's a little bit harder to wake up and be alert.
Moving.
So,
That,
so 15 to 30 minutes is a fantastic thing if you can train yourself, but you have to practice. I think some people have to practice to be able to go to sleep that fast.
if you don't know how
Right.
to do that when you start RAM, by Kansas, you will know how to do it.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
Learn to use RAM. Yeah.
Gotcha. Do you guys make a rigid plan, or do you follow that rigid plan, or do you kind of dynamically change on the fly?
Yes to both.
Okay.
Yes to
Loaded
both.
question. Yes. Okay.
Yeah. So we have a lot of spreadsheets that we work from. So we map out which riders are going to ride which stages or which time stations. We map out which crew are going which time, but we adjust on the fly on. We may have to make an adjustment for like a couple time stations, but then we'll try to get back on track as quickly as possible. So yeah, we map it out just like a football coach might map out a game plan for a big football game, but we know that the game plan is going to change somewhere down the line, and we make adjustments as needed. But yeah, we're kind of analytical like that. As Chris said, we don't track calories and we don't track a lot of biometric stuff, but we do track strategy in terms of who's going to ride what stages and who's going to drive what stages and who's going to navigate what stages.
Yeah, on this one, I think I'll generally agree with Randy, although I will say especially the Danish teams I've worked with, we plan the first 24 hours pretty extensively. Kind of know where we want to be and when we want to be there. So figure the first two times, like out to Brawley, we have a pretty specific plan. Beyond Brawley, we don't have a plan.
Wow.
Gotcha.
We just kind of take it as it goes. The expectation is that we each follow van. So if we're doing a 4-man race, we'll kind of break our team up into two-person teams.
Right.
The expectation is that each 2-person team should be able to race autonomously without any direction for up to 24 hours.
Gotcha.
And our basic plan is 2-man teams. We have racer A and C on the road, racer B and D are in the RV. Every 120 miles or so, 6 to 8 hours, we'll rendezvous with that RV, do a double drop, and we'll just keep doing that. And that's our base plan. And we'll stick to that for the entire race. But if anything else that comes up, mechanical trouble, somebody gets sick, we just kind of deal with that as it comes up. Because one thing I've learned, and there's nothing wrong with making specific plans. In fact, that's what some people thrive on that. But the more you plan, the more can go wrong. And that really will test your crew on how they deal with adversity. I think the less specific instructions you give them, the more they're able to use their freedom and creativity to make that race happen. And
that's a great point.
Maybe we've been lucky and we've had some successes with that, but we keep that skeleton plan for days, 2 through 6. But that beyond that first day, like basically once we cross the Colorado River, I don't want to say we're winging it, but we're kind of operating semi-autonomously at that point. We
Gotcha.
built and planned it, move from there.
Yeah.
Lee and I are both curious. What's kind of the craziest problem you guys have ever had, and how did you solve it? You know?
Crazy.
I can think of one that happened in 2010. So in 2010, we had a 4-person team, and we had 3 of our racers. So we were in the men's under 50, which is a pretty competitive category.
Right.
3 of our racers were former Marine officers. And I remember we had, instead of an RV, we had a rock band tour bus, which was awesome. You could sleep 9 people and you had your own bunk, and the crew was very well rested. Well, in Western Kansas, they filled the bus with the wrong kind of diesel.
Oh.
So we were waiting to make an exchange. I want to say near the town of Gass, Kansas. I don't know if that's still on the RAM route or not, but no tour bus is there. So I get a call from the crew chief, and she said, "Well, the bus is broken." I said, "How long till it's unbroken?" She said, "We don't know yet. They may have to tow it."
Oh.
I said, "So do we not have that?" She goes, "I wouldn't plan on having it anymore."
Wow.
So I had to give some hard news to our lead racer. I said, "David, we got a problem. We don't have the RV anymore." And all of our supplies and half of our crew were in that thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, some of us have been on shift now for 2 shifts, right? So we're due for a rest break. I said, but the crew's feeling good. So we have enough supplies in the follow vans to race for at least another 24 hours without stopping. I said, I recommend we continue at least to Jefferson City. Try and get there.
Mm-hmm.
He thinks about it. He goes, "We're going to Annapolis. Anybody that wants a plane ticket home can have it." He goes, "We'll race with the 2 vans we have."
Gotcha.
So we had a headstrong racer,
Mm-hmm.
but we had a crew that was adaptable and flexible. So we overcame the loss of basically our primary support and supply vehicle. Now, as it turned out, we kept racing, and we did catch the RV was able to meet us in Jefferson City.
Mm-hmm.
And I think some of the folks on our crew stayed awake for darn near 40 hours.
Wow.
So that was an element of adversity that no one ever thinks like, well, we're going to put the wrong fuel and completely disable a vehicle and have to have it towed to a diesel shop. So, that being able to communicate effectively, have that can-do team spirit, say, you know what? No one's expecting anything of us now. We're going to race like there's no tomorrow. I think we stopped at a hotel room in Fort Scott, Kansas, and so everybody could clean up and at least get some sense of normalcy.
Mm-hmm.
But that was a pretty serious event.
Wow.
We've had riders go to the hospital and get back on the bike. As far as dealing with adversity, I mean, that's part of the race. I don't think I've ever had a race where something unexpected didn't happen.
Right.
I think the key thing to remember is, and then the crew chief sets the tone here, make sure your reaction is appropriate. Don't over or underreact to the problem based on severity, and kind of don't make it worse by trying to overthink it. Just keep going if you can. Make adjustments on the fly. There's nothing short of a disaster that's really going to stop you in a race like that.
Right. Gotcha.
Sorry, I took too long, Randy.
No,
That was a good example. So Chris has had a lot more experience than I have, so I haven't had that many significant things happen while I've been crewing or crew chief. Had a rider who, because of a reroute, the stage ended up being much longer than the original stage. And I'll take part of the hit for this is that when he started that stage, he was under the belief that the stage was going to be like 70 miles. Well, it turned out to be like 105 miles. And this is in the middle of the night, 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. He got to his 35 miles of riding, assuming there was going to be 70 miles total. And he said, "I'm done." He got off his bike and said, "I'm done." He said, I was planning to ride 70. I was planning for a 70-mile crew or 70-mile route. I did my 35 miles. I'm done. So this was like, the other riders were at the next time station sleeping, waiting for them to get there. And so he said, I got the phone call at 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning that he's done. He's not riding. I said, okay, we'll have, just have the other rider push on, keep a bike moving down the road, put him in the car, bring him back to the RV. So they did that. They put him in the car, brought him back to the RV. I had to wake up one of the riders who'd only had like 2 hours of sleep. Said, you've got to go back out and ride, because this other rider, we were in a very, very hilly, climby section. This other rider is going to need some help. So he went out there and did it. And that was a tough thing to do, to wake the rider up. And but we pushed on and we got through it. But
gotcha.
We another real quick example in how we solved it was in 2013. Was with a two-person Danish team, and we were in Cumberland, Maryland. And the race route, I can't remember if it's still like this, but part of Cumberland, it can be kind of heavily trafficked. You're on a fairly major road, and you make a left turn, you go over a bridge.
Okay.
So we had gotten separated from our rider. We were trying to do direct follow, but we'd gotten split up. So we made the left turn, but we assumed our rider was ahead of us. Well, we saw another crew caught up to us and said, hey, your guy went straight at the bridge. I said, are you sure it was our guy? He said, only one other biking Viking out there. I said, that's
there you go.
So he did not have a cell phone. We had no way of contacting him. He did not know he was lost. So we backtracked, we crossed the bridge, had to go back onto the other side, and then just started going looking for the guy.
Wow.
And we had to phone back to our RV, which was in Cumberland, fortunately, and said, get our other racer up. And he had just, like Randy said, he'd just come off of a 6-hour pull. And I was freaking out. I was the crew chief. And we were driving around in a pattern trying to find this guy in Cumberland, Maryland. I finally went back to the RV and said, I'm fresh out of ideas. And I was starting to lose it a little bit. And one of the John Vammon, one of our crew members, is a great guy, and I've crewed with him before. He said, relax. He knows where we are. He will come and find us.
Right.
So I hope you're right. And sure enough, he did. He hitchhiked. Somebody pickup truck picked him up, and he was riding in the bed, goofball, back to the RV. But we lost about an hour looking for him. And the way we solved that was we don't send a rider out without some way of communicating with us should they get misplaced. I'm happy to say that's the only time we've ever lost a rider, but it can happen. And I used to think, oh, that's impossible. It's not impossible. You only have to lose sight of them for a minute. And if they make a wrong turn, and even if you follow them, you don't know you're doing that. That's really that's a kick in the teeth. So we said everybody goes out with some kind of phone now.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, us too. Yep, us too. We tried, using walkie-talkies and, line of sight kind of communications. And it's, phones aren't 100%, but they're better than nothing. So for communications, we use the cell phone. It's kind of up to the rider whether he or she wants to have like a open line with the car back there. But we'll put a speaker on top of the car to talk to the rider.
It's a great way to.
And of course, a lot of crews use the beep system. One beep for left, two beeps for right, three beeps for like pull over. So having multiple modes of communication is a good idea.
One of the most effective things we found, and I think we had this when we crewed with the Australians, Randy, was we had one of those little power horns. And you just out the window with that, and it really amplified. Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah, for sure.
With RAM comes interpersonal conflict a lot of times, especially when you're sleep deprived and tired. What's the best way to handle that, and diffuse situations like that on a crew? Or is there?
Well, I can say, sometimes if there's conflict, it's because you've created a problem, and then you have to try to solve that problem. So one of the things we're going to try to do this year is avoid the potential of having problems occur, particularly when we may get tired. So this year we are going to adopt almost an aviation style process where we're going to have checklists for pretty much everything. The communication inside the car. If I'm the navigator, and I say, okay, we got a right turn coming up in 2 miles. The driver has to repeat back to me, her right turn coming up 2 miles and then he should probably give me what the mile marker, or what the odometer reading would be at those 2 miles.
That's a great idea.
Just to communicate back and forth, because we found it, last year we're down to like 6 crew that were effective for the last 3 or 4 days. So that's 6 crew between 2 follow vehicles and an RV. Because we had 8 crew and 2 of the crew couldn't drive. We found out. So yeah, we were really, really tired and we were making mistakes. Communication was so hard. We could barely, towards the end of the race, it seemed like I could barely put together a cohesive sentence. I was so tired. But like I said, we still finished safely. We still won our category, but it was a lot harder than what it needed to be.
Gotcha.
So having procedures in place to potentially ward off things that might create an interpersonal conflict I think is the best strategy.
That's a great, yeah. We've had a couple conflicts over the years in RAM, and generally if it's between 2 crew, I'll put them in separate vehicles. I'll just say, you're in vehicle B now. Yep. If it escalates beyond that, I'll take that person aside and I'll say, you're sinking the ship here, bud. Like, we're all counting on each other, and I don't care if you don't like so and so, but you need to put your grown-up pants on now.
Yep.
And be part of the team. And if you don't want to be part of the team, I'll give you your bag and we'll drop you off right here.
Right. There you go.
Having you on the crew anymore isn't going to help anybody.
Right.
It's never come to that. I did have one instance where one of our riders actually was getting kind of chippy with the crew. And I was doing a bottle handoff with him and I gave him the wrong bottle. I think we were in Ohio, pretty deep in the race. And he took it and he threw it back into the follow van. He hit me right in the head. So I asked the driver to stop and I got out and I addressed him as calm as could. I said, we volunteered to be here for your ass. That's the way you're going to treat us. We'll stop right now. Like, you got to calm down. Right. And he recognized, he apologized. We were fine after that. Sometimes it's a matter of you hate to stop for even a second, but stop for a minute.
Diffuse the situation, right? Yes.
Diffuse the situation and keep racing.
Yeah. Excellent.
Believe me, I say this to every crew I've worked with, and I usually say it in Oceanside. I said, there's going to come a time we're all going to start to crack. I said, just think about what you're doing. You volunteered to be here. I said, somewhere there's a kid in a hospital bed with tubes coming out of his arms who would give anything to trade places with you. So you're lucky.
Yes. Definitely. Don't take it for granted.
I semi-jokingly say before, Saturday morning, before we start rolling from the pier and all the crews together basically, and say, okay, I'm going to apologize to everyone right now because I want everybody to apologize to each other because we're all going to do or say something during the next 7 days that would like to do that, and know that we still love each other and care for each other. And it's just the heat of the battle.
There you go.
We're tired. Maybe there's a situation that we don't know how to take care of. Maybe the comm isn't working good enough that we can get an answer to a question that we have.
Right.
But know that it's nothing personal. It's just the heat of the battle.
Do you remember, Randy, when we crewed in 2019 for the Australians, they had to spit the dummy? So if somebody on the crew was being especially complainy or kind of naggy, it could potentially become a problem. They made you wear a pacifier around your neck.
There you go. That's awesome.
It worked out really well. And I see on the chat, Red Pearl saying, this is something I never heard of, but it's kind of a good rule. Like, when she's chiefing, the crew and racers can only yell at her.
Yeah.
That's the job. Sometimes you got to be that pincushion.
There you go.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And I see Lee came in to kind of calm us down and possibly tell us we're over our time.
Calm down, everybody. Let's take a minute and catch our breath here.
There you go.
Boy, this has been great, Jim. I kind of hate to bring it to an end, but
I know this could go. I mean, we've still got. I've got so many more questions. I know everybody probably does have too. There you go. Exactly. We could go on for multiple shows with the crewing aspects of RAM and RAW.
Right.
Happy to come back if you guys ever want.
We might do that.
I was
Yes.
thinking about I read of a sea captain once was asked the question what he did during those long nights on the bridge. And he said he planned for disasters. He would think of a disaster and then figure out how he was going to solve it if that happened. Did any of those ever happen? No, but I learned how to plan.
There you go.
And I thought that was a good.
And it's really not thinking negative. It's just being prepared again to handle the situation that may arise.
Exactly.
You learn the process of dealing with crises. So, Hey, Jim, thanks for pulling this all together for us. And thanks, Randy. Thanks, Chris, for being here.
And we'll get back with you and we'll do a follow-up.
Yeah, this
definitely.
This is sounds great.
We had a great watching. Yes, we had a great viewership tonight. So that says a lot.
Great. I just have to say that next week in New Zealand, we're going to go on the air here at 10 o'clock on Saturday night with our plan of trying to make the shows most available where the guests are. That's going to be way beyond my bedtime, Jim.
Uh-oh.
But it'll be about 4 p.m. in New Zealand. We thought that would work out pretty well, and they agreed.
Definitely.
So we'll be doing that.
All right.
We have a welcome for you here in Ohio when you get here.
Yes. Definitely. We'll be watching for everybody and
you betcha.
Enjoying every second of it for sure. Kind of like tonight.
Don't go away when we get done here. And
thank you guys again for being here.
Thank you.
Thanks to all of our viewers.
Be sure to follow. Be sure to subscribe. Be sure to ring that bell. And Greg, where are you at?
This is Gregory Zuber, thanking you for watching and sharing.
Music by Kevin MacLeod.